Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we believe mental illness can be temporary and transformative. Stay tuned for innovative, effective tools from experts in the field of mental health. Hosted by Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist. This podcast aims to change the narrative around mental illness. Move from a place of fear to a place of hope and solutions. Here on Your Mind.
Our next guest is Dr. Ardeshir Mehran. His book title is You Are Not Depressed, You Are Unfinished. Use feelings of depression and anxiety to fuel a soaring life. Dr. Mehran is disrupting the mental health field, delivering more effective practices to heal depression and to ease the emotional suffering of people across the world. Everyone else portrays depression as an immovable cause, a mood disorder that must be treated. Dr. Mehran busts this myth and focuses attention on the real culprit, the unfulfilled life we must lead when we deny our birthrights. He is a developer of the Bill of Emotional Rights, based on 30 years of research, coaching, and clinical work. He is a psychologist, behavioral researcher, transformational leader, and leadership coach. He has a Ph.D. and a Master's in Education and Counseling Organization and Research Psychology from Columbia University, New York City. He has served in leadership roles in corporations and consulting firms. Well, Dr. Mehran, thank you so much for joining us here today. It's a delight to see you.
Great. Thank you, Tim. I'm so happy to be with you and with your guests.
I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write a book like this and get so deep into this field.
Thank you. And so my book, You're Not Depressed, You're Unfinished. I didn't know I'm writing a book. I was on a quest of a lifetime. And to be honest, I was trying to heal my mother. Growing up, I would see her eyes, my dad's eyes, but mainly my mother. She was there, but she wasn't there. I knew that she's struggling, she's suffering, and I didn't know what it is. And family of 6 kids, I was close to her. I was her confident, and I was thinking, mom is hurting. And so when I went to graduate school, initially I wanted to become a farmer, going to agriculture. My aunt said, go to psychology. And I was a very good student, top of the class. I went to Columbia. I came to United States. I'm an immigrant from Iran. I came to Columbia, triple major in my doctorate. I have 4 masters and I have a lot of certifications. I was trying to understand why people get ill emotionally and why healing process takes a long time. As a graduate student, we were told you will have a patient. They will see you weeks after weeks, months and years. And I was just thinking, that's nonsense. That doesn't make sense to me. We are not solving the right thing. What really was happening, I was trying to understand, how do I heal me? How do I heal my mother? How do I hurt less? So all I did, this is interesting, I started to pay attention. I learned all sorts of theory, science, and I was a good practitioner. Put it aside and just observe my patients. That when they tell their stories, how do they tell their stories? What is their body telling? They cry, they hear, they're breathing. A couple of times people would vomit in the middle of the therapy sessions. Why is that? The aches they were having, different parts of their body. And I was keep seeing that they are telling a different story than what we're engaged in verbal conversations. And I was noticing the same thing in me. So I started to take notes. I'm a researcher by nature, behavioral researcher. And I saw the following, that across the years, gender, ethnicity, lifestyle, wealth, when people are struggling, more or less they tell the same story in different languages. And I was telling them, tell me more. And I noticed they are telling the story with certain structure that gradually it became the emotional rights, the Bill of Emotional Rights, that when we are ill, emotionally ill and stuck, there are certain consistent emotional patterns that they have been violated, never fully developed, or nobody told us about it. We are seeking to go home. to finish the job, that we were not allowed to do that. So this journey, even though the book came out last year, took me about 11 months or so, put it in writing. I've been writing it for 30 years, notes here and there, but really it's about we are designed to heal better, faster. We don't need long-term therapy. If we go to the source, to our original design, and restore what didn't get fully shaped.
And so name for us, if you will, those rights, those emotional bill of rights.
Yes. So the reason I call them rights, I come to see them, they are as elemental as our Constitution. We hold these truths to be self-evident. These rights, parents don't give it to us. Teachers, partners, so on. And there's a pattern. So the rights start like this, a right of belonging. I belong. There's a love in my connection. I'm loved, love received, love given back. Doesn't mean it's nirvana, but there's a sense of connection of heart. And this happens right at birth with the early attachment and the quality and the right attachment of bond that we come to this world. Many people in my corporate world, I see that in the room of people love them, in family, everybody around them, and they're deeply isolated. There's a sense of isolation that many of us, we have, in fact, globally, we have a pandemic of isolation. The first right is a sense of I belong. The next right that comes right after that is a sense of I am boundless, is our understanding our bodies. In the modern science, there's a distinction of mind, body, spirit. That's a byproduct of Rene Descartes, that I think, therefore I exist.
I am, right?
That's right. That's right. We, throughout the history, we are one being. We actually feel our feelings through our bodies. Brain doesn't feel anything. Brain can label it. It's about being in touch with our bodies and a sense of expression of our being and enjoying our body, being in touch. Many people, again, I worked in a corporate environment. The body is a mask that we don't understand. We say, my heart hurts, my gut is tight. No, they're telling you something. Your shoulder pain, the shooting pain down the neck, they mean something. We are not taught to understand our body and use that as a sense of expression. That's I'm boundless. The next need is I am complete. Many of us, for a long time, it was my story. We live in our past, shame, guilt. I'm not finished. What we haven't been learning, but now the modern science of trauma and the pain clinics bring it to us, that we live literally in the moment, that our body, our nervous system has no memory. It's our brain that's continuously going, trying to see the views and the images of the past. But we are designed to be in the moment and to finish the work we never got to finish. It's about being in the power of presence, and our healing happens in here and now as we are, and coming out of the shame and guilt and so on. The next right is I matter. This is fundamental. All of us are in the company of others, yet there are so many invisible people. I was in corporate again. I would see people enter the conference room, in the town halls. Nobody sees them. They come in quietly, sit in the back, and they leave. Nobody calls them by name. Nobody asks their opinion. And we think it's okay. It is not. That basically we become invisible after a while to ourselves, that we feel we don't matter. And there's a term I use, no decision about you without you, that you have a voice being asked. That's how we treat our children. Are they seen, part of the table, family decision making? The next need is I make. Everybody on this earth is doing something. Some people in the farms, some people in the boardroom, some people finance, some people in the military. We all doing something. Is that your thing? For many years, I was doing the work, very successful, make a good deal of money. It was not my work. And I was basically numbing myself. We know from Gallup research year after year, up to 70% of workers have lower engagement score year after year. That's not okay, because from also Gallup research, we know in those groups with lower engagements, they are higher rate of depression and anxiety. So part of that is the environment and what we do. Going to the step about what is it you're supposed to do in life. The next need is need of I am. Everybody has a conviction, has a story, has a belief. Doesn't mean it's the best idea. What is your idea? Do you know it? Do you share it? Do you defend it? Do you express it? Men and women express this differently. I see many women, their voice becomes very subtle, becomes like a little girl trying to please others and be heard and be nice. With men, they overshoot, they become very boisterous. This is what I believe. It's really about telling your conviction, is your soul message, the voice of inner core. Once you do that, you feel strong, your backbone feels strong versus just being dismissive. Final one is a need that typically we become aware of it around mid-30, is the need of I soar. Behind me, Tim, as you see, there's a flip chart by Maya Angelou, and I have it all over my desk. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. Everybody has a story. 8 billion people, 8 billion stories. And we all here on this earth at this time to do things that only you can do. That is very empowering. And it's yours to find and a step toward that. Again, doesn't mean things will be jolly happy once you know it. You still have a lot of hard work to do. But as you feel complete that your being matters at this time, those 7 needs, we are meant to experience them all through our lifetime. And at each point, this is important to hear, at each point in life, usually about 2 or 3 are more active. There's more energy around them. As you're listening to my voice, reflect inside which of those 7 needs excites you, mystifies you, like your northern light calls you. That indicates the work you want to do to further develop yourself. Usually, there's a need that brings sorrow, regret, feel that there are things lagging behind, you haven't done enough work to fulfill that. That's the opportunity. And usually there's a need that brings stability, some foundation, makes you feel strong. For example, right now in my life, I soar brings me so much joy, so much energy, because I know the work I do, this is my work. I need to bring this message to the world so people don't suffer that much. That motivates me. The part that gives me the angst is I make. It's a new business model for me. It's a new way of therapy. So I'm experimenting, learning, marketing, billing, client development. But I'm thinking, Ardeshir, get over it. Figure it out. Other people have. Do the work. The one that gives me stability is I belong. My wife, my son, golden retriever, my friend, and it wasn't like this. But whenever in doubt, I go there to nurture myself and feel stable.
So one of the things I like so much about the book is that at each level, you invite people as they're reading to take a breath and get centered and notice the physical experience or the emotional or intuitional experience of just what they read or just what you're directing them towards. And I get a sense by reading the book and the different people you talked about working with in your therapy that you use a lot of the somatic therapeutic approaches. And we know how powerful that is to start to relate to the energy that happens below the neck as though it's good information. To not label it as right or wrong, good or bad, but to see it as a feedback system.
That's right.
And that's one of the things I really appreciate about it, especially the examples you give of working with some people in sessions, and you've actually outlined how some of those exercises help them get in touch or get centered. Can you talk a little bit about your favorite exercises for connecting?
Thank you. Absolutely. So this is the work that there's a bit of a story. So I was trained as a clinician and I was well respected. My advisor liked me and keeps saying, Ardeshir, you're doing great work. Deep down, I felt I'm not doing great work. I don't feel I'm making a difference. So I left the therapy, went to corporate environment to be a corporate exec, which I became. I was very disillusioned. Then inside a company, executive will come to me, it was under the rubric of leadership coaching. I was doing therapy. So I'd given up on therapy because really I felt it was verbal conversation that through understanding cognitive, tell me about you, what are you seeing, and so on. I don't know exactly how it happened, but I came upon the work of Peter Levine, Dr. Peter Levine, which later on I trained with him, is about the father of somatic experiencing therapy, which is about what happens to our bodies. And there's a whole science of trauma that came actually from Veteran Affairs Hospital working with soldiers with PTSD. And we learned so much about body, that we are one being head to toe, that we experience the world and almost our emotion, including thinking, with our entire body. When I read that, it was almost a missing link for me. Then I read the book, Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk, and I've been pouring myself and reading about the whole field of somatic science. What we learned is that body operates a lot faster than the brain. So when patients come to me these days, compared to 10 years ago, the very first thing I do, to your question, Tim, is help ground themselves. Ground themselves is basically electrical term that a human being, we're always grounded. Compared to the past, when somebody comes to me, they're anxious, they're angry, they're frustrated. This is the brain talking. I invite them first, become whole, invite your whole being into the session. So the question I ask, I don't ask them, how do you feel? I do an exercise and I ask them, what's coming up for you? What are you sensing? So what is the exercise? It's 3 layers. One is invite them to do breathing. And all I do is notice your breathing. How breathing starts, how long it continues, when it ends. Notice the movement of your lungs, move and the rhythm of your heart, then the synchronicity of your heart and lungs, and then 5 senses. So what I'm doing, inviting them to be in here and now. As we do this, anxiety drops. Next thing is visualization about you are connected to somebody that loves you, somebody from the past, present, could be real or imaginary, or could be your pet. And the third one is that you have a sense of agency, that in this hour we are together. Anything you want to do, I invite you to do that. If you want to sit, you want to lay down on the floor, some of my clients do that. You want to pace the room, whatever you want to do, I invite you to do that. So you feel you have control. Presence, connection, agency. Once we do that, neurologically speaking, we become whole. And then I ask them, what's coming up for you? Then you realize people talk about chest pain, stomach churning, memories, flashback. We work with those. I don't start about what happened yesterday, boss, parents, so on. Whatever comes to you at this moment, that's the wisdom. And then we start now and then go back, understand the past, come back again to here and now. What happens, and I've seen this over and over, people have significant release and catharsis. Oh my gosh, you see suddenly people breathe differently. You literally can see people's pupils open up, their faces open up, the wrinkles loosen up. And they says, oh my God, my back is hurting. I didn't know my buttocks hurting so much. So people come alive in physical experiences. In those moments, compared to the past I did therapy, I'm very quiet. I keep the space for the person to do the work because they're going the journey of excavation, really, and work with what comes up. What I'm doing for them, this is important, I'm operating as an atoned witness. This is a term coming from Dr. Levine, that for us to heal, we need to tell our story as it comes up with all the angst and pain. Tell our story, and our story needs to be heard. Without interpretation and without really curiosity, be heard and reflected back that I heard you. I've got your back. I understand you. And then work with whatever the person, the client wants to work, to release, to work through. So
now, the critical part of that is that you started with the body awareness. So you're telling
Absolutely.
the story from what's coming up you're not spinning
The brain.
with rationalizations about the past or the future.
That's right. That's
So
right.
because it's grounded in this visceral physical awareness, the story is so much more relevant.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
get so much more of a shift when you have
Yeah.
that attuned listening happening, because it's a story about the whole person, not
Yeah.
just the stuff that was programmed into their mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it what you mentioned, Tim. And then what happens, suddenly you see people start to connect, stitch together stories, memories, body, because the ultimate goal of healing is wholeness and integration. That you see people remember, oh my gosh, my mom was like that. This is how I'm raising my daughter. There's a reason my stomach keeps, like it started to tighten up when I got to situation. They start to see, notice themselves in different part of the story. How did it end up here? And their body's telling a story. Their memories suddenly show up as it needs to be. And to me, when I see that, it's my own healing that was delayed for so long. Because over the years, I've been to 7 psychologists, wonderful psychologists, psychiatrists, took the medication, but I felt they were focused on my symptoms, but I missed me. I wish somebody like this existed for me when I was in my 20s, first time I went to therapy, that now I would have been a different life trajectory, but I had to learn this firsthand and bring it to people.
Yeah, if you had a time machine, that'd be great. You could go back and do that. But then the other way to look at it is, because you went through what you went through, now you have something to offer that wasn't there before.
That's
And
right.
one of the things I really enjoyed in the book is the different views you gave us of people who came in very intelligent, very successful in different ways in their lives, and still dissatisfied or
Yeah.
really stuck.
Yeah.
And when you go through this process and you have them help them tune
Yeah.
into their whole self more, they often realize, the image I just got was of the little creek that's been dammed up, and so it forms this lagoon
Yeah.
behind it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's nothing but a trickle coming down from the lagoon. But
Yeah.
if you get rid of the dam, this thing flows and it winds, and it's got a whole different path
Beautiful.
for
Beautiful.
people's lives that
That's
have
right.
come from a lot of your therapy sessions.
Exactly. I love what you mentioned that we go through life, and I've yet to see somebody that hasn't experienced this. We all get compromised. We end up with the words we use, the parents, the boss, the experiences we had. We end up operating in a certain way that we constrain ourselves. And many people go through their lifetime. Family, my mom and dad, they have passed away. They didn't fully experience what it means to be free, emotionally free. But many people can turn it around once they realize they are blocked, they are compromised, emotions, body, how they interpret the world. And when pains build up, that's the opportunity for healing versus numbing ourselves, drinking, distraction, and so on. That's exactly at certain point the dam builds up. What do we do with that? That's really a life gift for us.
Yeah, there's Dr. Michael Rice would say the purpose of pain is to make our ears grow. So
Yes,
we listen
that's
more,
right.
and if you have this awareness that if you've been able to separate yourself from the current allopathic medical model that says if you've got a pain you should squash it, but
Yeah,
you go back to the old style that said if you've got a pain, listen to it. There's information there, there's
that's
direction
right.
there.
That's right.
And then you start to make changes at a level that are affect, as you say, loosening the whole thing, getting the flow going.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember Dr. Mark Hyman talking about how, we know what it takes for a human being to live a happy, healthy, fulfilled life. It's not rocket science,
Yeah,
but it's not just clean water and clean food and good rest. It's a sense of purpose, a sense of
yeah,
connection and
yeah.
community, a sense of love. And these are the kinds of things that you get at in your Bill of Rights.
That's right. That's right. And part of that, I was mentioning that actually I've mentioned it to a number of folks that if you go and do a search, Google search about what does it mean to be emotionally ill, the literature is vast. All the mental illness, ailments, the American Psychiatric Association will come up. The list is endless. Go do another search. What does it mean to be healthy? You You will see Abraham Maslow about the hierarchy of needs. You will see Viktor Frankl about
Man's
the
search for
man's
meaning.
search for meaning. But then you will see fragments here. What do children want? What do elderly want? What do professionals want? Nobody's been curious, put this together. So the work that I do, it's really compiling what existed in mankind from I went to Greek philosophers that we all know this exists. And these are not willy-nilly, I'd like to do this, yes or no, but this is the essence of humans, that we can raise family like that. This is what children need, what parents need, partners, classmates, co-workers, being more intentional around what does it mean to have a fulfilled life. And to me, I talk about opposite of depression is not happiness, it's fulfillment. When we live fulfillment, which again is not believing castles, you still have a lot of work to do, but you're purposeful, you're driven, you get things done, and you see depression shifts. Depression basically says you're living an unfulfilled life and you know it. Depression is your own signal, your soul's signal to you. And that's why it hurts so much.
Well, that's one of the messages I hope more people will get from books like yours, is that rather than have something occur in your life that you don't like and go to a professional, have them label it a symptom,
Yeah.
and then give you some, whether it's a talk therapy solution or a medication to get rid of the symptom, that is so out of alignment with you as a whole person that
Yeah.
it can't bring you any lasting relief.
Yeah.
But if you understand that the pain or the discomfort or the dissatisfaction is just the symptom, that there's an underlying cause, that if you get at it and make some fundamental shifts, your life can be transformed, usually is transformed for the better.
Exactly. Thank you for mentioning that. I want to be honest that I do get emails, actually the direct messages from social media. So I'm active on LinkedIn. Every week I get private texts coming to me, either they're from psychologists or psychiatrists. And more or less they say, man, you have no idea, you don't know what you're talking about. That depression is an illness, needs X, Y, and Z treatment, needs this kind of medication. I don't get into those conversations. I thank them and tell them, you have your data, I have my data, and I let the history be the judge. And that's the reason we see so many people struggle with depression. Is almost become a fact of life for us, that we keep trying to address the symptoms, versus if we need to go upstream about how did that person end up here. If we open our lenses, what is their body telling them? What narrative of life they have? You see, depression, to your point, is data, is information. The story of depression, it shows you how you can come out of it. So I welcome those pushbacks, because I think by nature, I'm a science geek, that we need to figure this out. As a society, mankind, we've suffered enough.
You can direct those people to books like Robert Whitaker's Anatomy of an Epidemic.
Thank you.
And Mad in America was another book he did. But the science is there that says these medications they give people for these issues were only ever intended as a short-term stopgap to prevent crisis. And that the longer people are on them, the more problems accumulate.
That's right.
Dr. Jody Skillicorn was a young psychiatrist, and she came out all eager to, now she's, gotten her education and passed her tests, and she's ready to go. And she's got her list of symptoms and her list of meds, and she's ready to start prescribing. And then somebody gave her Anatomy of an Epidemic, and she read the book and said, well, wait a minute, they didn't teach me any of this in medical school. I can't practice like that. That would be malpractice.
Yeah.
And then she had to go educate herself about what can you do to actually help people with these mental emotional patterns.
Yeah.
And she ended up writing the book, I think it's Healing or Curing Depression Without Medication, Dr. Jody Skillicorn, Skillicorn.
I love that. In fact, a colleague of mine, very successful executive coach, professional leader, she called me in October, said, I'm going to graduate school as a clinical psychologist. I love the field. And she's been tracking my work, said, I want to go become a therapist. And I shared with her, great, you do that. Make sure the program you go to offers somatic science, because most of the psychology training these days is still about the mind and behavior and the personality traits. That the whole somatic science is more or less parallel processing with current field of psychiatry and psychology that they haven't intersected yet. So I suggested take courses, and I give you a list of courses and experts to go and do apprenticeship with.
And also suggest that they look into coherence therapy.
I'd love to. Can you say a little more about coherence therapy?
Coherence therapy used to be called depth-oriented brief therapy. And it's Bruce Ecker and his wife, Laurel Holy, who started to question what goes on when they have a session with somebody and there's a deep, quick shift that lasts. And so they started to just analyze the transcripts with a critical eye to the process as much as or more than the content. And they discovered that if you have a deep experiential shift, somatic based, experiential, let it come up, visualize this or that, rather than just talk about something, that was one of the key things that had to happen. They also discovered that it's every time that kind of a shift happened, they had moved away from the anti-symptom position. Yeah. The anti-symptom position says, doctor, I keep raging at my boss and getting fired, so can you help me stop raging at my boss? And the pro-symptom position says, well, let's figure out why some part of you feels so desperately, urgently the need to rage at your boss. And once we discover what that is and help you see it, one of two things happens. Either instantly you quit raging at your boss because you find another way to meet that need, or you realize, oh, raging at my boss is the only way I get out of this abusive job environment. So it's a good thing. And I want to do that when I'm in an abusive situation. So the essence of the coherence therapy model is that as long as you are understanding that whatever a person does, they've got really good reasons for doing at some level of consciousness. Yes. And if it's unconscious, every time it gets resonated, it seems to drive them as though they're out of control. But if there's a conscious awareness of what that dynamic is, it'll either drop away and you'll find a different, more productive way to meet that need, or you'll say, you know what, I'm just going to redefine this as a good self-protective mechanism.
So
I love that. Within that model, you can do EMDR, you can do the EFT tapping, the neuroemotional technique, the bioenergetic synchronization technique. You can do internal family systems work. You can do all of the somatic, you should be doing all the somatic therapy work. Because I look at the coherence therapy as this overarching model that says, instead of trying to chase symptoms, help people discover within themselves what are the root causes at this unconscious, emotionally implicit knowing level.
That's right.
What they've learned is that when they usher people into that awareness, they trigger memory reconsolidation, which they used to believe couldn't happen. Right? Our scientists, our psychologists and psychiatrists used to think once you had a trauma, you're traumatized and that's it. And you always have that memory and it always means what it means. And what they've learned is there's a window. If you can get yourself to open up a memory at that experiential level, you open up a window during which, if you work with it the proper way, there's a 4 or 5 hour space where you can rewrite the meaning and the neural pathways can change. And that's where these transformations happen.
I love that. Thank you, Tim. First of all, I love the resources you mentioned. I definitely will go review them. And I would love when people do disruptive thinking. And one of the ways that I see me of being in service, even on LinkedIn, once a month, I put a post about 10 things you need to do, or 10 topics, or 10 experts. So I'm going to read these books. Some of them, the first time I'm hearing, say, hey, you need to know these books, bring this for general audience to know this. I love that. Thank you. It was a gift to me.
Well, you're quite welcome. Your book is a gift to me. I hope it reaches a good, wide audience of people, and that some people start to actually question for themselves, as you encourage them to do throughout the book,
Yeah.
which of these emotional rights resonate with you as being solid and resonate with you as needing work, and which ones might be shored up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a very useful way to look at things, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to have it as a resource.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And then as people read the book, and the chapters, so I talk about what each right means. What is the science behind it? Some of them really I stumbled upon by observing my clients, my patients, and then what we know from the literature. There's a short scale about where are you from a need being fulfilled and unfulfilled. And also for each right, I've put together a Spotify playlist. All you have to do is scan it with your Spotify. There are 10 songs. Once you know these rights, this is what you notice, that almost everybody in your orbit, when they talk about events, distractions, affection, conflict, they are expressing those rights, fulfilled, unfulfilled, or their needs or their interpretation. So you see, those needs, they're all over us. We've been swimming in them. The singers, the musicians, you see paintings. So part of that, once you know that, you're in a conversation with somebody in your life, you know their wavelength. This person is really, they want to express themselves. This person is talking about the I am, and is I am. They are lonely, they're isolated. Makes you attune to that person. And so the conversation becomes more intimate, becomes more honest and more real here and now. So I use this in my own development, growth as a father, as a spouse, as a neighbor. So I hope listeners use this for their own betterment in wherever you are.
Yeah, it reminds me of the neuro-linguistic programming, the way to listen to words and patterns
Yeah.
that people express, so you
Yes.
tune into their key ways of interacting with the world. And now you've mentioned two things that I really liked about the book. One of them is all of the different citations you have for the science and the research that's been done in each of the areas of your 7 Bill of Rights.
Mm.
And the other one
Mm.
is the music list you put together. That's
Yeah.
just tremendous amount of work, and I hope people avail themselves of that and find value in it. Let me ask you to just, because we're running out
Please.
of time here, let me ask you to just clear your mind for a minute, take a breath, and get centered, and think about, of the things we've already talked about, which ones you want to go back, what one we might want to go back and highlight, or something we haven't even touched on yet from this book of yours.
It's a great question. Two things keeps coming to mind. Of the rights, there are two rights I see very fundamental based upon the society we live in today, our days. One is the one, I belong, sense of connection. That connection, the very first part is connecting to yourself, me, connecting to me, my life story, my grace, my being here, because that allows me to connect to others around me. The other one is the need, emotional need of I am. Everybody has a story. Your story is liberating, is powerful. Your story needs to be heard, and the first listener is you. Are you telling your story? Are your ears hearing you, indicating what you believe in, your preferences, what you want from the world, from people around you? Those two needs are so important, especially in the era and the communities we are. I invite people to start from there, the connections you have, and you claiming your voice in your life as you are right now, today.
Wonderful. Well, I join you in extending that invitation to people. I thank you for taking the time to share with us. How do you prefer people connect with you and contact with you?
So just doing a search, you go online, my website, and I've put enough information. People download. You can read about the Bill of Rights. You can see my podcasts, my blogs, which I talk about what is trauma, different ways for people advance their own self-healing. And my email is right there. Contact me. I'm a scholar and I have a book, but I'm really here trying to shift the way we talk about mental health, mental illness.
And
If
so
this resonates,
what's the website?
Ardeshirmehran.com. www.ardeshirmehran.com.
Excellent. Well, and that'll be in the notes for the podcast or on the YouTube when we do this. So thank you so much. It's a delight reading your book and meeting you in person. And thank you for the work you do.
Thank you so much, Tim. Best of everything to the listeners.
Our next guest is Dr. Ardeshir Mehran. His book title is You Are Not Depressed, You Are Unfinished. Use feelings of depression and anxiety to fuel a soaring life. Dr. Mehran is disrupting the mental health field, delivering more effective practices to heal depression and to ease the emotional suffering of people across the world. Everyone else portrays depression as an immovable cause, a mood disorder that must be treated. Dr. Mehran busts this myth and focuses attention on the real culprit, the unfulfilled life we must lead when we deny our birthrights. He is a developer of the Bill of Emotional Rights, based on 30 years of research, coaching, and clinical work. He is a psychologist, behavioral researcher, transformational leader, and leadership coach. He has a Ph.D. and a Master's in Education and Counseling Organization, and research psychology from Columbia University, New York City. He has served in leadership roles in corporations and consulting firms. You Are Not Depressed, You Are Unfinished is a book drawing on 30 years of research. It shows how mental illness, particularly depression and anxiety, are our own signals saying, wake up and reclaim your emotional life. Emotional struggles are not about broken minds or chemical imbalances. They are caused by unfulfilled emotions and unfinished life paths. In this book, you will learn to analyze your emotions and body and pivot from managing symptoms to living a more fulfilled life. Depression and anxiety are consequences, not causes, and they can be substantially alleviated. They provide a nudge for awakening and reclaiming ourselves. Claim your emotional rights to elevate the trajectory of your life.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.